If Castlevania II is The Legend of Zelda 2, then Castlevania 3 must be Link to the Past, because this game just nails the formula. There are alternative paths that you can take, as well as multiple characters that you can make ally you. You will have to swap characters around. You don't get to keep all three of them and then just select who you want. If you have Saiha with you, you have to change to Alucard if you meet him and decide to join with Alucard instead. However, they all introduce a very different way of playing the game. Grant can walk up walls and is generally the faster character in the game. Alucard is able to turn into a bat and just fly around. He can also shoot little projectiles similar to his dad, but they're not quite as good as his dad. And Saiha, which in my opinion is the best character to pick, just has some insanely useful projectiles, although she is a lot slower than the other characters. It's just cool and very refreshing to play a classic Castlevania game where you don't necessarily have to play a lot of the game as a Belmont. And it's also nice for replayability because of all these different characters and the different paths that you can take. It's the most replayable NES Castlevania.
Would you say it's refreshing to be able to play as different characters? Like, does it add a new dynamic to the game?
But yeah, being able to play as new characters is refreshing, and the way, like, it completely changes how you play the game. I don't know, it just makes me come back. I can see as well why this game became the basis for the Netflix series, because if you're gonna pick a classic Castlevania game from the NES era to make a story out of, you're gonna pick the one with the most characters and the one with actual, like, plot outside of just villagers lying to you all the time.
Dracula has to be destroyed. We can't fail.
Would you say this game has a more developed story than the prior games? Like, that's something it's focusing on a bit more.
The story in most of these Castlevania games and most NES games at the time was just, you would read the manual and you'd just get a little blurb of just, okay, you're Simon Belmont, you're a cool rad Chad dude, you don't like Dracula, you go to his castle and kick his ass. Castlevania 2, it's just you read the manual. Okay, Dracula cursed you, you have to go find all his body parts so you can bring him back and kick his ass again. Whereas Castlevania 3, you don't necessarily need to just read the manual and wait for the demo reel to necessarily know anything about the plot, because you can fight Grant as a boss, and then when you beat him, he's like, oh, Dracula cursed me, thanks for helping me, mate, can I join you? And then you go, yeah, Grant, let's
Sorted,
go.
mate. Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking do it. Let's have a fucking mosey on down.
Let's bash that bash.
So I'd say this is the one with the most developed story. I guess it takes elements from both 1 and 2 in the sense that the things it takes from 2 is a more non-linear exploration with the multiple routes and actually trying to have some semblance of a story. And then obviously taking Castlevania 1's actual tough as nails platforming and pattern memorization and difficult bosses. On that note, the Western version of this game is so fucking hard. I don't know why Konami of America decided to just make the game more difficult when it came outside of Japan. My only assumption to this could be because of the rental market.
I've heard it was totally the rental market.
As this is a case for a lot of games at the time. A little bit of trivia for Resident Evil fans out there. The reason that the original Resident Evil didn't have an auto-aim, despite the Japanese version having so, was specifically to artificially make the game harder so that more people would rent the game out. But because Japan doesn't have a rental market, they didn't need to do these things. It was just buy the game or don't play it. On that note, the actual Japanese Famicom version of this game is by far the best way to play it, because the difficulty is in this perfect balance of being challenging without making you want to throw your controller across the room. The music as well has the same enhanced sound fonts. I think it's The music itself has like extra sound channels which allow for more notes and instruments to actually be played through the sound chip. So it's just better. It's just a better version of the Castlevania III soundtrack. It's how it was intended to sound. And unlike Castlevania II, it doesn't have these horrendous high-pitched noises that just make me want to rip my ears off. This is absolutely the best version of the game to play. I would totally give this one a recommend. If you have to play any of the old classic NES Castlevania games, play Castlevania III. And if you can, try to play the Famicom version.
But there was never an official release of the Famicom version.
Unfortunately, no, there has never been an official release of the Famicom version, so you're going to have to make a lot of Nintendo lawyers very, very upset when you download a ROM.
I'm playing tiniest smile in the world right now.
I'm sure Nintendo and their millions and millions of money, that's my favorite currency, just money.
Yeah, money.
just sitting on their massive mountains of cash, are very upset that there's a small sub-community of people playing the Famicom disc version of Castlevania 3, as opposed to importing a Famicom or importing a Japanese system just to be able to play Castlevania 3 on the Famicom.
Would you say that Castlevania 3 masters this NES classic formula?
Yeah, I would say that Castlevania 3 is completely gets. It's like the end of this era for games design where the development team have learnt so much through their last two games that they then decided to make this magnum opus to usher out the age of the NES. I would arguably say that Castlevania 3, it would be in like my top 10 NES games. I'm not going to start doing top 10 lists, but if I made a top 10 list, that game would be up there.
It would be Castlevania 3 10 times, right?
Yeah, it would just be Castlevania 3, but reworded in different ways, so people thought they were different games.
So like Akimakyo, Dracula.
Yeah, you get it. It's fantastic. Give Castlevania 3 a go. Especially if you like the Netflix series, what the fuck? Definitely give Castlevania 3 a go, because it's got all those characters you like in it.
And there's references.
Fun fact. Did you know that the Netflix series, all the characters' colour palettes are purposely meant to look like the colour palettes of the NES games?
Thanks, Did You Know Gaming?
Yeah. I think that's a fact. That could be bollocks.
I think it's true.
Come the Scheming Fox. I sometimes tell you facts that may or may not be true.
The ultimate sign of gaming journalism.